Heartstopper Forever, the finale of the huge Netflix hit, dropped this week, and something felt off. Although I've never been a mega fan of this show, I had enjoyed it and found that the show constantly improved throughout its 3 seasons in a variety of ways. And yet, Heartstopper Forever felt almost like a collection of all the little issues I'd had with the series throughout the years, shoved into a 2-hour runtime with a random song from Spotify constantly playing over the top. But why? Why did a series so known for its heartfelt and touching atmosphere feel almost empty at the end? And perhaps more importantly, why deep down this is okay? Why even with all its issues, I'm still glad it exists. This is Heartstopper Forever, a fragile farewell. I may be talking calmly here, but let it be known if there wasn't the risk of me being sectioned, I would be screaming this point from the rooftops. This isn't just a Heartstopper problem, this is an issue that is plaguing the industry as a whole, and Heartstopper Forever is just the latest show to fall into the trap. Film isn't television. The movie industry and the telly industry are 2 different beasts, and although that may sound obvious, the gap is slowly closing and it's leading to projects having some of the weirdest pacing issues I have ever seen. Now, although I'm not a fan of shows ending on a film, I prefer things to stay in their medium, that's not exactly the issue I have here. Heartstopper ending on a 2-hour movie is fine in concept, if that's what it's determined to be. And I understand it wasn't originally intended to be a movie, but once that decision was made, you need to commit to it. Because Heartstopper Forever isn't structured like a movie. It doesn't have the natural arcs, the side characters, the A, B and C plots we're accustomed to seeing within a film. Instead, it's still a TV show, with a runtime that is constantly fighting against it. The finale takes place over the course of a school year, with each act being broken up by the change of the season. Again, fine in concept. However, plots, especially those introduced early on, rarely travel over into the following act, giving the story an episodic feel without enough breathing room to really explore anything below surface level. We start with Charlie becoming head boy and being determined to fight against the bullying and homophobic culture within his school. He stands up to some bullies who are picking on new kid Alfie, and later on starts a club for LGBT+ students, even though his headmaster told him not to. The first meeting at the club is a success and many students turn up. And then, this plot vanishes. It goes, with still an hour left until the credits. As soon as the main drama surrounding Charlie and Nick's relationship takes centre stage, these plots that take up a good chunk of the opening half fail to lead anywhere. Now, this would annoy me in a TV show, but in a film it's inexcusable. Things need to build, scenes should have purpose, may that be moving the plot along or revealing character. But due to these moments seemingly vanishing, they don't do either. Yet, I can imagine the show having a whole episode dedicated to the head boy plot, perhaps even 2. A whole episode of Charlie fighting against the headmaster and setting the club up anyway. Then, these new side characters would return later throughout the season, giving reason for these earlier episodes. Perhaps Charlie would arrange for most of them to attend Pride. The headmaster catches news of this, afraid of parents' backlash, leading to actions, consequences, conflict, character, storytelling. Yet due to Heartstopper Forever being a 2-hour film, these plots don't have the luxury of time. They're not given the room to feel complete on their own, and yet are given far too much screen time when they ultimately don't matter. I'd argue the actual main plot of the film doesn't actually start until the night of the gig, where Nick gets pissed as a fart and kicks off a little. More on that later. It's the first piece of actual conflict that has consequences on the main plot. The story properly starts, but unfortunately renders everything before it pointless. There's some easy fixes here too. Later on, Charlie relapses into a depressive episode, leading him to stay in bed and not eat again. This is where the school club could pop back up. Surely his duties as head boy need to return here. So have Tao step up, start leading the group. There's some good comedy to be had with the straight guy having to lead the LGBT+ group. Have it be that perhaps Charlie has taken on too much too soon. Actions, consequences, character, storytelling. Then you can have one of the new members from the club help Charlie in a way that his friends haven't been able to yet, giving that whole plot a reason for existing. One show that masterfully adapted to the big screen formula is The Simpsons. Bear with me here. The Simpsons movie is a movie through and through, with every scene leading to some kind of consequence that will come back to play later on. Homer and Bart's dare contest leads to Bart being disillusioned with his dad, leading to Homer having to win back his family's trust and love at the end. Homer gets a pet pig, a spider pig if you will. This could easily have been a silly throwaway subplot like the show, but instead it leads to Springfield's downfall. There is one singular story, and every set piece and scene is working for that narrative. Heartstopper Forever, on the other hand, feels like a collection of episodes, with the second half shaved off of them to make room for the main storyline. This leads to audiences wondering what they should actually care about, resulting in a pacing both too slow and too rushed at the same time. Also, I know I said going out with a film isn't an issue in itself, but I do think it takes away some of the character and the identity of the show. Heartstopper is warm, it's cozy, it's one of those shows that wants you to curl up with a blanket and a bucket of snacks and feel like you're in the company of friends. A film feels more like an event. It has a different atmosphere as a creative medium, and audiences naturally have a different mindset when going in and pressing play. Heartstopper isn't an event-like spectacle, it shouldn't be, it doesn't fit. And I think when saying goodbye to a collection of characters, you want to do that in the same way you fell in love with them to start with. I genuinely believe people ignore the importance of medium, a book, a TV show, a film. It's more than just structure, it's the experience, and changing that right at the end can throw a viewer off immediately. Heartstopper has always had a fairy tale quality to it, leading to many people adoring the show while others wonder what the fuss is all about. The series may deal with difficult themes, mental health, homophobia, finding your own identity, but it very much held the viewer's hand throughout. This isn't a criticism, it's just a technique that works for some and not others. There's always been a lightness to Heartstopper, a whimsy that along with a colourful aesthetic and, I'm gonna be honest, unnatural dialogue at times gave the show that fairy tale feel. But Heartstopper Forever details a time in people's lives where fairy tale endings rarely exist, and this duel between authenticity and keeping that aesthetic led to the finale fighting to find the right tone. Could you tell I ran out of breath there? I ran out of breath there. Really ran out of breath there. And listen, I was never expecting the finale to be gritty. I'm not that foolish, but I was surprised by how apologetic the script seemed to be about a natural part of growing up. Leaving school and going to university is one of the weirdest things, probably the biggest life change you've been through at that time in your life. People move on, break up, find new friends, and ultimately forget about their old ones. You go to a new city to study for 3 years, unaware that you're going to fall in love with it and are about to spend the next 20 years of your life there. It's a magical and brutal time. For some, it is a fairy tale. For others, it's the hardest of transitions, full of cruel realizations and awakenings. Heartstopper Forever talks about this constantly, with dialogue that is sometimes far too on the nose for its own good. We hear many characters talk about how teen relationships don't last, how Pride or Prom could be the last time they all hang out together. It's mentioned within the dialogue, it's exposition, but without the feeling. Can I borrow a feeling? There's an air of everything is going to be okay, that it will all work out, these people won't actually lose touch, etc. But one, I don't believe that's truthful, and two, it takes all kind of stakes out of a story that is 2 hours long. And yes, the show has always leaned closer to the kinder, more relaxed viewing experience, and I think that worked in the past, but these characters are growing up, they're becoming adults, and the script seems to refuse to let them go through that natural scary change. These characters aren't kids anymore, they're drinking, but really many of them should be smoking or vaping, some should be on the dating apps, and at least 3 of them should be shitting their guts out from dodgy kebabs. Nick's drunken night out is one of the only real moments of messiness that any of the characters experience, but even this has this careful atmosphere around it. It's portrayed as one bad night, and yeah, he fucked up, true, but he's young, he's gonna fuck up constantly, in multiple different ways, and working at a dog shelter isn't going to change that. And I'm not saying that Heartstopper Forever shouldn't have that fairy tale tone, what I'm saying is that the plots it's exploring feel slightly empty when the majority of the characters make the right decisions every step of the way. Elle's monologue about the current state of trans rights is a great example of this. She says all the right things. It's an important monologue in one sense. Yes, trans people are constantly having to fight for the right to piss, let alone live, but it's so note for note perfect that it's without any real character. Elle can get things wrong here. Let her be more selfish, let her tell Charlie to get off his ass and fucking march even if he is struggling. Is that a little mean? Maybe. But is that anger more an honest representation? Probably. Does it feel more like a real character? Definitely. The pretty perfect nature of the characters robs Heartstopper Forever of being a great representation of growing up. It doesn't have to be gritty, it doesn't have to be a complete contrast from the show, it just has to grow up alongside the group it's following. It has to allow them to be messy individuals that occasionally fail without them having to learn their lesson within the next 5 minutes. It can still be a fairy tale, but just one that's a little more mature. A silly example, but at the end of the movie, one of the characters performs a solo at a large crowd, and I'm sorry, I know many singers who gig, and that is not the truth. What a lovely, silly, harmless bit of normality would it have been to have her come out on stage to a crowd of 6, one of which is an old guy at the back reading a paper. There's something sweet about that, something normal. It's not cruel to allow them to be a little bit shit. This is why Nick Nelson is the strongest character in Forever. It helps that he's played by Kit Connor, probably the strongest actor amongst the main cast. I'm very excited to see how his career continues to grow, but more than that, he's the one character whose growing up is front and centre of the narrative. Him struggling to find his identity Charlie struggling to find where he fits in the world away from his relationship is the perfect narrative to follow, and I wish the film explored this even deeper at times. Nick doesn't really have any friends of his own, his mates are Charlie's mates. I would have loved this realisation to come up, though I wonder if again that would have seemed too mean. Although the show does portray this, even if by accident. None of them worry about Nick during the breakup. He's perhaps one of the loneliest characters in the show. Though again, the aesthetic sometimes fights against the rawness of this moment. There are multiple scenes where characters are alone with their thoughts and feelings, usually in the bedroom. However, all but one of these scenes are accompanied by a song playing over the top, and I think this robs from the emotion of the moment. Silence is a powerful tool in storytelling, and when characters are alone, I want to sit in their silence. If a song plays over the top, it almost feels like company. The raw, horrible loneliness is being filled. It's too pretty, too kind. And again, perhaps in a TV format this wouldn't be an issue, but during a 2-hour runtime, the constant needle drops become very noticeable. Trust your script, trust your actors, and more importantly, trust your audience. Let us experience and feel the emotions and the story. We've grown up too. You can let go of our hands. When something comes with a side salad, that salad is only there because the plate looks a little too bare without it. It's not for your enjoyment. No one cares about the side salad, but it's to stop you complaining. This is how I unfortunately feel about the side characters in Heartstopper Forever. Without them, viewers would complain. So they're there, but they're not filling you up. This is a massive shame because the supporting characters of Heartstopper have always been fun. Yes, the acting hasn't always been the strongest, and yeah, some scenes have felt a little pointless. Whatever, their appearance was always welcome, and some of them did have some great little storylines over the years. Also, fantastic representation, incredibly important in a show that so many younger people watch. Once again, their lack of storylines this time round comes down partly to the runtime and partly due to Forever not fully grasping the difference between TV and film. In TV, you can easily have supporting characters have their own little storylines that you can cut to, or you could even dedicate a whole episode to them. In a film, the supporting characters need to be much more attached to the main narrative. But as Heartstopper Forever focuses so heavily on Nick and Charlie's relationship, the friendship group has little purpose or reason to be in most scenes. This means their brief appearances feel more like an obligation than a necessary feature, and this is a massive shame, because it's the finale. We as the viewer not only want to spend time with the gang, but feel like we've said a proper goodbye to them as well. The side characters' plots, if we can even call them that, can be described simply as Tao and Elle are breaking up, Tara and Darcy are going to go interrailing, Isaac still likes books, and Imogen is a lesbian who is particular about wine. Tao and Elle are probably the second couple we spend the most time with throughout the show after Nick and Charlie. Now, I love that they're breaking up. I love the detail that they've been on and off a lot over the last year, but it stops there. We get more scenes of other characters talking about their relationship than we get scenes which actually develop it. I want to see more of the awkwardness, the chats, the trying hard to make it work, the wrong things said and the wrong things done. I want to witness their own realizations that teen relationships rarely work. I want to feel it, not just be told it.
Hurting hearts need some healing.
And yeah, again, in a TV medium we would have gotten this, but this could easily have happened in the film as well. Their relationship problems mirror what Nick and Charlie are going through, but this parallel goes basically unexplored. It's used as a reason Nick or Charlie get worried about the future. It's a device for their story, rather than a story on its own that can overlap and engage with the main narrative. Tara and Darcy, however, are probably the biggest disappointments of the film, especially following the last two seasons, which really fleshed out their worries, insecurities and fears. Darcy's home life gets no real conclusion, while Tara's worry about university is suddenly forgotten once she remembers trains exist. They really have no purpose, no story, and absolutely no effect on the main narrative. They don't cause any problems, nor do they fix any. There's no actions, there's no consequences. They sit, they talk about trains, they watch some sharks, they go on trains. Here's hoping we get a really gritty spin-off where they're smuggling drugs across Europe. And it's weird, because seeing less of these characters would highlight the whole growing apart, getting older story, and yet it feels more like a time restraint issue than a proper narrative decision. I need the lack of screen time to feel purposeful. I'd also argue there's no reason for the main narrative to take away from the group so much. Yes, Charlie and Nick are the main characters, their relationship is literally the point of the show. But their story within Heartstopper Forever doesn't warrant nearly 2 hours. They have some problems, a lover's tiff, break up, get back together again. It's an hour of story, an hour 15 at most, stretched out to fill the movie runtime. There's some lovely stuff going on here and there, don't get me wrong, their little disagreements and breakup offers some of the strongest scenes of the film. but 2 hours of two teens moaning and having picnics feels a little indulgent. I can't help but wonder how Forever would have felt if it actually focused on the anthology format more, an anthology of love stories that interact, weaving between the different narratives. Each one could focus on a slightly different issue or problem that young couples face. The focus can still be on Nick and Charlie, that's fine, but it would allow room for their conflict to breathe while also showcasing some of the other characters we've gotten to know over the last 3 seasons. Because the 3 seasons do a good job at establishing the group, their little dynamic, this bundle of misfits that find joy in the smallest, weirdest, most brilliant of things. It feels odd that the film refuses to focus on this, either in a joyous celebratory way or a sadder, slightly bittersweet way, as the gang slowly go their different ways throughout the course of the story. Either way, as an audience member, I want to say goodbye to them. I want to feel like it's been a proper goodbye. Their absence should be prominent after the credits roll, not an hour before. And yet, as I sit here on the floor bruising my lovely little coccyx, I can't help but wonder, do any of these criticisms actually matter? I think partly they do, that's how art works. I adore film, TV and creativity as a whole, which means I'm usually either gushing about something or providing a good bit of British criticism. And yeah, I don't think Heartstopper Forever is the great finale that this show probably deserved. But yeah, I don't want this video to be completely negative, especially when discussing a show that has positives that shine brighter than a lot of other works. I'm not Heartstopper's target audience. I prefer my shows to be grittier, a bit more truthful. I like work that's angry and pushes what can be funny and sad and joyous. Altogether, Heartstopper has always been a little too cuddly for me. But I can't help but think about those viewers who needed that cuddle and what this show would have done for them growing up. For a show to have characters who are gay, bi, trans, asexual, non-binary, etc. all on screen, all different body types and ethnicities, all with their own identities and place within the narrative is incredible. For a show to then portray these characters as artists, musicians, sports people, film buffs, writers, etc. helps destroy the cliches that we can easily put certain groups into the same box. One week finale doesn't destroy all this work, nor does it take away from the joy that it brought to its audience. Heartstopper also tackles mental health in a very careful and sensitive way. I personally found some scenes to be too careful. I think the brutality of mental health and the lackluster services on offer in our country is a massive part of it. To ignore that portrays only half the story. And yet, maybe here it's okay. If the show is that cuddle, if it is the audience's safety net, then focusing on hope may do more for the viewers than necessarily focusing on the darker, more honest truth. I think there's a place for hopeful storytelling. Without it, we're fucked. And if that's what Heartstopper represents to its audience, especially its younger viewers, maybe that does more good in the long run. Because I agree with the critics of this show at times. Heartstopper does paint a very pretty picture of the world, even when dealing with harder hitting topics such as bullying, homophobia, transphobia, and mental health. And I do think sometimes its sweetness can be aggravating, especially at a time where it feels like everyone should be fucking screaming and rioting and protesting. Because the real world is harsh and cruel, and that cruelty only seems to be growing. Then I take a step back and I think we need to offer hope. It's important to show that life can still be fun and pretty and stupid. Today's kids are already fighting their own battles, and as they get older they'll have to fight a lot more, not just for the LGBT community, but for a good job and to be able to afford rent, let alone buy a bloody house. This generation is walking into a hellish landscape where everyone different is a villain because the world is run by clowns. If Heartstopper makes that seem a little bit easier, if it offers an alternative to root for and inspire to, then maybe that's perfect. Because somewhere in the country there is a teenager watching Heartstopper Forever and feeling seen. Perhaps they're also feeling inspired, or hopeful, or just safe. All the criticisms in the world can't take away from that. I said at the beginning of this that Heartstopper was like a fairy tale, and I think that's a good comparison. Because fairy tales are usually used to teach lessons, don't talk to strangers, believe in your own abilities, etc. I think the lessons Heartstopper teaches, although a little twee and easy sometimes, can only have a good effect on those young people watching. Heartstopper may not be to everyone's taste, but it was made with everyone in mind, and that's enough to put a smile even on my cynical little face. Heartstopper Forever as a film itself is forgettable, but as a show, as a brand, it's kinda delightful.